Hello, legendary listeners, and welcome to the Legendary Ladies podcast. This week, Kat and I are here to talk about the newest Netflix movie, Nimona, which I'm very excited to talk about. Everybody kept talking about it, and Kat, sure enough, was like, hey, we should talk about it. So Kat, Morgan, and I all watched it, and then Morgan got sick. Incidentally, Kat's healthy. I'm also getting over a cold. Poor Morgan is, she even watched the movie just so we could talk about it. And I genuinely want Morgan here to see what she thinks about this movie. But Morgan
Maybe that'll be a Patreon episode for the future.
There you go. We'll get Morgan's thoughts on Patreon.
Yeah. Just that way, she watched it for a reason.
Yeah, that way. No, hopefully she enjoyed it. I know that I enjoyed most of it, so I'm excited to see what you guys what Kat thinks. So just a little housekeeping things. First off, we are the Legendary Ladies podcast. We have a new updated Twitter account. If you used to follow Legends_podcast, that Twitter account has now been manipulated into something else. So you're gonna.
Does it even matter anymore? With Twitter?
I don't know. We're all on Threads now. I don't know. We're on Threads. What's it? Blue Sky? Blue Bucket? Sky Blue?
Yeah,
I don't know what we're on anymore.
Blue Sky, I don't know if that's moving so much. Threads, I'm getting random followers. I don't know what's good anymore. But
I don't know.
I know we have a podcast and we have a TikTok.
We're on Instagram. So our social media places, just so everybody knows, Twitter, Legends_podcast. Yes. Instagram, The Legendary Ladies.
That's Threads, probably our Threads. Yeah.
We're probably going to have a Threads.
I think Morgan already made one.
Pretty sure she did. TikTok, The Legendary Ladies. Patreon.com/The Legendary Ladies. You should now be able to find our podcast on Stitcher, on iTunes and all that, under the Legendary Ladies podcast. So please subscribe, please follow, please leave us a 5-star review if you like the new content. If you have any content you would love us to talk about, email us, thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. We love to get feedback. We are not always able to read all feedback every episode, and sometimes we kind of decide on how long the episode's going. We're trying to keep our episodes fresh and consistent, so we love to read new feedback from new listeners. So please send us your feedback, comment on our YouTube pages. Gesundheit, Kat. Was your mic on, or did you just completely mute that sneeze? I was really impressed.
I muted. No, I don't think I could.
I thought you held that in. I was like, impressive.
I just muted the mic.
And if you are a Patreon subscriber, you would be able to watch this episode live, participate in the chat, and get some super cool behind the scenes content, which the people who are now watching live know, because we just had a lot of fun behind the scenes content. So let's move on to discussing Nimona. So first things first, Nimona is a Netflix movie. If you have not seen Nimona, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. We are going to be talking about the spoilers. Come back and listen after you've seen the whole movie. But Nimona is actually based off of a graphic novel, which I did not know, but I immediately suspected. Like, as soon as I started watching it, I'm like, I bet this is based off of a comic book series or a comic book movie. And we're just talking about the movie on this podcast because as I was looking up the information for the graphic novel, it turns out that the plots are quite different. Like, very different, actually. And that this is more like an adaptation of Nimona. Have you read the graphic novel, Kat?
No, but believe it or not, when Phil and I were like beginning to be friends, he got it for like one of my birthdays, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, I never read it, right?" And he said, "Yeah, I figured that after we became friends." But I got it for you like before I really knew you, because like I knew you liked comics.
But he assumed you liked comics and queer stuff, but was off on the fantasy mark.
See, at that time, I wasn't even out, so he didn't even know the queer stuff. He just knew I liked comics. And I think his, Dan was reading it at the time. So I'll get this for Kat. Because, again, we were just starting to know each other. But, all these years later, I still haven't read it. So I did the movie, though. And I've heard of the book. Like, I know that it's the creator of the She-Ra television show, the newer one, which I have watched. I actually have seen. Yes. And I have watched that. And it was interesting to kind of compare it. Also, what's interesting about this movie is one of the Try Guys, Keith. Remember Keith who did the we did the mukbang about him? Try Guys. Okay, Morgan did a Patreon about mukbangs, and I said you got to watch these people. And one of them was Try Guys, one of them was Keith, and he's part of the Try Guys. But the other Try Guy, which is Eugene, he's one of the voice actors in this.
Blocked that whole thing.
Oh, that's so sad.
That whole mukbang episode, it was out of my brain. I hated it.
Become a patron if you want to watch the mukbang
Amy,
episode.
Get really uncomfortable.
Yes, I loved it. It was fun.
The Try Guys was one of the voice actors?
Yeah, one of the Try Guys. So not the one who eats the menu, but Eugene. He's the gay one.
which
the night, not the night that was like not the one who
Todd,
like killed
Golden Loin, or Blackheart.
I think it was Golden, the one with the blonde hair, the one who's like the boyfriend, the one who fell in love with him. Yes, the one who fell in love with the guy Golden who killed.
Loin. Yeah. Because I thought that was hilarious. I was like, his name is Golden Loin.
I'm glad you remember the names. I only know Nimona because it's the name of the movie. We also did get a question. This is from our Patreon episode, but I want to answer it here. I actually mentioned this in our group chat. Have you either of you read Red, White, and Royal Blue or seen the trailer? I saw the trailer. And it is gay, and we're most likely going to discuss that movie because I feel like it's in our wheelhouse. I did read a book from the author. Let me see what the book was called. I actually really liked it. I was really, really impressed. The author is Casey McCluiston, and the book I really liked and I thought was good was I Kissed Shara Wheeler. It was like a good mystery book. If you watched our Patreon, you'll learn that Amy does not love mysteries, but it's like a mystery paper town style book, which I enjoyed. So that's why I'm like, maybe I'll like this movie. But I did see the trailer of it. I'm like, we'll see. It looks cutesy. It might be a little bit too rom-com, but we'll see. We'll see if we'll probably cover it.
Okay, so let's hop into Nimona. So this. First off, it just came out a couple of days ago. And what's funny is I actually did not see any trailers for it, but we were talking, you and I, on an episode a couple of weeks ago about how Instagram and TikTok post just enough clips of a show to make me intrigued. Mm-hmm. It was a 1 minute behind the scenes clip of them doing the audio recording, and I was like, oh, this looks really interesting. Like, I'm very fascinated by I'm enjoying this behind the scenes thing. I wonder what the show is. Oh, Nimona. Oh, this is what we were gonna watch for our show. So I do think it's interesting that, just like we were talking about, like TikTok and Instagram have really pushed how easy it is to access things that it knows we're gonna be interested in. The algorithm is spot on. So I had not seen a whole lot of conversation for this until it came out and all that behind the scenes stuff came out. Had you been at all in the Nimona world? Had you known about this at all?
I knew it was gonna happen just because, again, I watched She-Ra and like I know a lot about like comic adaptations. So I was like, I knew it was something that has been discussed for like years, like years and years and years. And it was a popular book for a long time. I don't know when it came out, but that's like what put the creator on the map. So I knew about that, and then I knew it was coming out maybe a month or so ago. I mentioned to you guys, I'm like, oh, I think this could be a big thing, because stuff we try to cover on the podcast are things that are not like, I mean, obviously you cover the Flash movies or the Spider-Verse movies that are like huge, but then also like kind of niches like we tried to cover. So I'm like, oh, this feels like it fits a niche, and maybe a lot of people are looking for coverage of it. But maybe there's not a ton of coverage for. So we're like, let's do this. And
then it blew up.
And then it blew up.
So popular.
And it got very popular, which I'm not surprised. It was just a type of animation, type of thing that I feel like people would like. So that's why I was like, okay, this could be interesting, especially off the heels of, I'm not comparing it to Spider-Verse, but there's, a very unique animation style for it. Mm-hmm. And then there's so many people that love that She-Ra show, which rightfully so. I think it's a really solid show. So I just think there's a lot going for it to make this a popular movie.
And it had almost like one of those, I know this is going to sound strange, but it had a bit of a Zootopia vibe where it had just enough funny extra little quirks thrown in there that as an adult you could watch it and go, huh, that was silly. Or I liked the fact that they made fun of this, or they made fun of that, or the fact that the guy's name is Golden Loin. Like, that's hilarious. And I like the world that they created, which was very much a medieval fantasy world, but also with subways and drones. Like, right. I loved that combo. I thought it was so fun that they're riding around on horses with swords that are also electronic, controlled by a bionic arm. Like, I thought that world that they created in this was very interesting. And I had looked up the graphic novel because I was curious. It is different. So the graphic novel plot is a little bit different. Pretty significantly. It looks like, and again, I've not read it. I'm just going off of what I've seen on the synopsises, but it looks like the main guy in Nimona, the Netflix show, his name is Boldheart. So the main guy is Ballister Boldheart, Bal. But in the graphic novel, he's Blackheart, and he's an actual villain, quote unquote villain. And so he is an actual villain, and Nimona's like, I want to be your sidekick. And he's like, cool, let's do it. So this whole backstory of he kills the queen, that's not there. So
that's what made this so good too, which is so
I agree.
I don't want to say so good where it's like my favorite movie of the year. I don't think so, but I mean that this is a movie, and it's so interesting because I'm sure if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you could watch this and be like, Kat's not gonna like this. It's like there are a lot of things that Kat wouldn't like, but I think because the plot was so strong and the characters are so strong. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid movie. Like I think the plot moves very well. The characters are interesting. And it's definitely more character driven, even though there is a lot of world building. So it kind of meets in the middle a little bit for me, where I'm like, oh yeah, I had a fun time with this. I'm not going to say again, is this my favorite movie of the year? No, but was it a solid watch that I would recommend? Yes. For me, yes. I want to recommend it. Obviously, if you love this stuff, like watch it with a bowl of popcorn. But if you're more like me, who's like, all right, I usually don't like this type of stuff, I'd say it's like pretty good. I don't want to say background noise, but like if you're doing something else that you could kind of watch
bread making movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like doing something that you're still paying attention, but you don't have to. Mm-hmm. It's not the only thing you're doing.
Yeah, it's easy to follow, and I remember keep going through it, and I was like, oh, we solved that mystery, and oh, that thing happened. I was like, we're moving this plot along. Like at one point, they're like, oh, we got the confession from the evil lady, and I was like, we still have half the movie left. Where are we going? What are we doing next? And I liked that. I liked how fast it moved along. I think it's one of those things where, am I going to watch it again just on a whim? No. But if I ever have, a party or whatever, and we're watching stuff in the background while we're all just chatting, like This is that kind of a fun movie. If you've got kids, this is super accessible to kids. And I do have some more in-depth things I want to talk about the concept of children being taught to fear versus being born to fear something. So we'll get into those more in-depth themes later, because you want to talk about, like, this movie is quirky and fun and silly and ridiculous about a whale falling through 4 levels, including a shower. But at the same time, there are some real intense topics in this film. So we'll get to that in a bit, but I'm glad that you liked it, Kat, because I did like it. What's interesting is I had a feeling you would. Like, I was watching this and I was like, Kat's gonna like this. This is just enough Kat to be Katniss.
Yeah,
which is great.
For sure. It was like, it's a great middle ground. And I guess it's a good movie for me and Amy, just us to talk about, because usually we're on the opposite sides. Amy's going to return in a second. But it's usually, we're always like, oh, this is like too fantasy driven. This is like, too realistic. And again, there's the subways, but then also the horses. Yeah, it was, I'd be curious to see what Morgan thought, but I feel like she probably was in the same boat where it's like, it's a
she
cute
probably
movie.
Loved this.
Yeah, I don't know if she'll be like, this is my favorite movie of the year either. Yeah. I think the people who are going to appreciate this are people who are hardcore She-Ra fans and people who already really like the comic. And also, like you said, I think this is great for kids. I think this is a great one if you have your kids at home, you really don't know what to do with them, and you want to give them a new movie.
It's a very good summer movie.
Yeah.
This is a very good summer at home. I don't know what to do. I have the day off. I'm not feeling great. Let me watch TV. Let me watch Nimona.
Comfort.
I will say it was a little loud for me at moments, and that might be literally because I've got a sinus infection and my head feels like it wants to explode.
I think it might be that, because there wasn't any moments where I'm like, whoa, it's too loud.
It was just, but like loud, not necessarily like loud visually, like just a lot going on at once. I was like, take a break. But I enjoyed it overall really, really well. And I also enjoyed the very clear nods to intense themes that they put into this. So there's a lot of themes that we could dig into. There's the concepts of the queer aspect of
100%.
the film. There's the concept of fluidity in the film, on how that one speech that Nimona has where she's like, shape-shifting for me feels more natural. Having to hide who I actually am feels like an itch, like that sneeze the moment right before I'm going to sneeze.
Which is interesting because I believe the creator is either non-binary or trans, either one. I don't know which one it is. Look it up. But maybe that was, it's kind of like a Matrix situation where the creators of that movie, they were trans, and that was like kind of a vehicle to tell that story. And maybe this graphic novel is a vehicle for them to tell that story, before they were able to transition.
So it says in July 2020, Stevenson announced that he was, quote, non-binary or something like it, and that he used any gender pronouns.
That might have changed. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to dig too deep into this until I've made sure that I have all the proper information. So as of March 31st, 2021, Stevenson stated that he is transmasculine and bigender.
Okay.
So this individual is a member of the queer community. And so it's very clear that influence plays in this movie. And I would love to see if that speech where Nimona is talking about shape-shifting and how that feels more natural, and not having to hide, that feels more natural, and that being in her like little girl form is actually uncomfortable for her. I would love to see if that was lifted from the graphic novel, because it was such a powerful speech that it felt very much like the author was writing that into it. And I love that. I love when movies and comics very clearly are written from the soul and written from the spirit, where you can tell that this person put their whole heart and soul into this little bit of dialogue. It's just a small little bit of dialogue, but it has to connect with people. There has to be some kid out there that's like, oh, that's me. An adult that is like, oh my gosh, that feels like me all the time. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be with gender fluidity. It can be with just feeling abnormal anyway. I mean, I was always the kind of person where I'm always like big and flamboyant and the theater girl and kind of crazy. And it took me, I'm still figuring it out, but it took me a really long time before I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna be me, because me trying not to be me is the hardest, most exhausting thing. And it speaks to me. And that moment spoke to me a lot. Were there any moments, I have another one that really stuck out to me, but was there another moment that you were watching this and you were like, dang, like this hits harder than I expected?
I like the speech. I think that was good. I don't think there was any moments where I was like, whoa, but I think there's a lot of moments I was surprised that the movie went to. Like, I didn't know about the romance between the two knights, so I was like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't know you're going that direction. That's great representation. And then like the twist with the queen, I think there was just more moments where I was like, oh, that's cool that a kid's movie has so many twists and turns, because I think a lot of times like Pixar or Disney movies, not a lot of times, and this is coming from a big Disney fan, they tend to just go on the track you're used to seeing a Disney or Pixar movie going on. And this kind of felt like, oh yeah, we could do what we want to do. We could tell a queer story and not be apologetic about it. We can have some good twists and turns, because that's what storytelling is all about. and not feel like kids are going to be confused. And I think that's the thing I was surprised by that I haven't seen in a while, because I feel like, going to Disney and actually I think this was supposed to be a Disney movie. I think let me see who actually originally picked it up. I know this has been traveling the world with how many people were supposed to produce it. The film, let's see, production wise, on the great Wikipedia, 2015, 20th Century Fox acquired the rights to the film. That was 2015, and then because Fox was owned by Disney, Disney actually was gonna do this movie, and then I guess Netflix. Is it still a Disney movie? I actually don't know. So Walt Disney completed its acquisition. The film was delayed, and then 2019 the film was delayed again. Through 2020, there was a word that the film would be released. Maybe it is a Disney movie. Let's see. Because it's under the umbrella of the 20. It's distributed by Netflix. Is it a Disney movie?
I think it's just Netflix.
Following the Walt Disney acquisition, the parent company of Blue Sky, the production received pushback from Disney's leadership due to the LGBTQ themes, after which delayed multiple times, being canceled due to Blue Sky's closure. Yeah, it was acquired by Netflix after. So originally it was a 20th Century Fox movie. Then it was a Disney movie. Sky. And then became Blue Sky, and then became this. So that's so interesting that it went through so many things. Because what I was going to say, with a Disney movie, I think sometimes they keep it safe. And I'm glad they didn't. Honestly, and I'm sure you've seen this movie because it seems like an Amy movie. But it reminds me of How to Train Your Dragon. Like, have you seen those movies? Okay.
I had that multiple times. It had a How to Train Your Dragon vibe. I was like, oh, different though, like different vibe. But I definitely more than once I was like, this How to Train Your Dragon a little bit.
Yeah, no, and especially like with the twists, because like I was thinking about the second movie with How to Train Your Dragon with the dad, and I remember watching that.
I haven't seen the second movie yet.
Ooh, sorry, well, I didn't say anything.
You didn't say anything. I interrupted you.
Spoiler alert. But you should probably see the second How to Train Your Dragon. But there's a moment with the dad that something happens, and I was like, oh, I didn't expect it to happen. There's actually a twist in this movie, and I feel like what I was gonna say with Disney and Pixar, I haven't even seen the recent Pixar movie Elemental. It was like no one was talking about it, and I was just like, man, it feels like Disney's in this rut in a way. Yeah, because like I'm thinking one of my favorite documentaries is Waking Up Sleeping Beauty, and it's about this really bad era of Disney where they were making these movies that just were not being successful, like the Black Cauldron and all that. And it talks about like the birth of Pixar and the birth of like creativity in Disney again, where the Renaissance came. You got to see like hit after hit after hit, and obviously Beauty and the Beast actually getting nominations and I think winning the Oscar. So it's like, oh, this really cool way of like, look at these people who were able to reshape Disney. And now I feel like we're in the Black Cauldron days of Disney again, where you're like, man, where's this Renaissance? Like, where's
not really
the new stuff that's happening? And are things like Nimona or Spider-Verse going to show like, yeah, we're actually doing something really different with animation. We're leaving Disney behind. I think Disney kind of has to figure out a lane. And I know that the most recent stuff they're going to be coming out with is a lot of sequels. It's a lot of like, all right, Frozen 3. I think Zootopia is getting a second movie, which again, as fans of those movies, I'm excited. But yeah, I don't know what that means for. It's interesting because we're also living in a world where animations might be the only form of entertainment for a while, because it's the only thing that's
currently safe.
Yeah, it's the only thing that's not dealt with the writer's strike. So I'm very curious to see what, again, the future of animation is going to be.
And I think, too, there's something to be said about the fact that we now have multiple streaming sites, that Netflix can pick this up and do a one-off. They don't need to have, like, they don't need to be a Pixar or a Disney to make it happen. They can just do a one-off movie. Pammy in the chat brings up a point that Pammy has read the graphic novels and says the romance was not directly stated in the novels, but heavily insinuated in subtext. The book plot differs from the movie, but it was great to see the movie establish that relationship in the first few minutes, which I did like. We've always talked about how some of the best organic queer relationships are the ones where it just ends up being an organic queer relationship.
Right.
And right off the bat, I love the fact that like the reporters are trying to make this really animosity driven character relationship between these two characters. And they're all like, hi, honey, good to see you. Like all lovey dovey. Like, I want the world to see you the way I see you. And I was like, aw. Because we're not even 10 minutes into the movie and Golden Loin cuts off his best friend / boyfriend's arm. And I was like, oh, that's going to cause some trauma drama. Like, that's great. I love that. I'm like, I really like this. It took me a hot second to figure out why the movie was called Nimona, because I was like, why are we, like, it's called Nimona. Mm-hmm. And obviously this character's going to be a big deal, but where is Nimona? So I like that we did. I
don't think it was that long, though. Yeah, I didn't think I thought it was like, oh, really? I was like, oh, this is just the prelude of the movie. And maybe I think I was like working on a Kickstarter page or something while I was watching it. So maybe that's the reason why. Like, I was also like kind of multitasking while I was watching it.
I was like, who's going to be the main character for me? So I liked, I thought Bal was more of a main character than Nimona was until the very end. Because even still, I think that Ballister's the one who goes through the major character arc in the movie. Nimona is the catalyst for the character change. She's the one who inspires Bal to look outside of his preconceptions, which is ironic and beautifully written because he was the one asking everybody else to look outside of their preconceptions about the concept of a commoner versus a nobleman as part of the knights. Yeah,
so everything's very like gray in that regard, you know, which I definitely liked. Like everything, there wasn't so much black and white in the movie, which is cool. I know you're gonna change to a different subject, but I want to get to the end of the movie for a quick second. So I was like, man, this movie kind of also ends on a cliffhanger because you're like, oh, is she alive? Like, is she not? Too? Yeah, I was like kind of surprised by that.
I think that I think it was set up for be like Nimona too. Like I think that's it. I guess I was kind of debating whether or not the character of Nimona, like if Nimona survives, why would she not want to then be a part of this world that has hopefully started to accept her?
Maybe that's the journey, right? That's the journey. Maybe that's the journey is her self-discovery.
Yeah, that maybe that's the next story is, well, everybody says they like me. They think I'm a hero now. But do they really? Are they really? Do they like the idea of a hero, or do they like me as an actual hero? Obviously, they've definitely set up this world to keep exploring. You know, they've blown apart the wall, and they see that outside of the wall is this beautiful world that they have never explored before, and they're very clearly going to start explore. So I think what it was is it's just straight up a setup for Nimona too. Like this is gonna have a sequel at some point, but there's a lot more to explore, and I was just surprised that it ended that way. I guess I was, you know, that did that thing where he's like, oh my gosh, and then fade to black, and I was like, oh, we're ending it there. Okay, we're not going any farther. I was just a little surprised at that. Were you?
I was even looking for like an ending credit, and especially because it looked like there was like 20 minutes left. I'm like, 20 minutes of credits, there gotta be more. It was really just 20 minutes of credits.
Okay, so let's move on. There's two things I want to talk about. One is so you know the story at the beginning, the Gloreth twist, where she was like, Gloreth is this big hero who slays the dragon, and then you actually see the story and it's just two friends, and this little girl is corrupted by what her parents have established. Like, there's so much I would love to. I am not a child psychologist. I have worked with kids for a very long time. I'm not a parent, but I would love to hear someone who is a child psychologist or someone who has explored this kind of stuff think about the idea of how open-minded kids are, and how this movie shows more than once moments where kids are influenced by what adults or parents tell them they have to think about something. So Gloreth playing with her friend, they're just they're just friends. And then all of a sudden the adults are the ones who say, this is scary, this is dangerous. They're the one who start attacking the thing that they don't understand, the thing that they fear, and in turn get Glorith to fear it. Or that one moment where that, like, the multiple times little kids are looking up at Nimona as the shapeshifter and they're like, wow, it's so cool, it's so pretty, like, look at this character. And then it's the adults who tell them, you need to fear this concept that you have to fear things as a kid. I mean, there's so much of that going on in this world right now. And I love that this movie finds a way to have that conversation in a very gentle way. A reminder that you don't need to inherently fear you don't need to inherently fear anything, that you need to be allowed to make your own decision and, grow to accept things as you see them and not as you're told that they need to be. Like, I thought that was beautifully well done throughout the entire film.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they do a good job with it, again, with the theme of just Nimona as a character herself. And then, like you're saying, that scene with how the kid reacted to Nimona, I thought was interesting. I think it's what, because I think the hard part with this movie, and not a bad way, is like, is it a kid movie or is it not? Like, who is the target demographic?
The target audience.
Yeah, because like it is very much a kids movie where you feel like it's almost like a storybook where it's like, let's teach you a lesson. But then there's the other side where like this is a book that's lasted, that was created 15 years ago, and there's fans and they're all adults, and you're like, who's it for? But maybe that's the point. It's like kind of for everybody, which is nice. There were maybe some jokes that I felt like were a little too silly, where I was like, yeah, this is definitely for kids.
Yeah.
but then for the most part, it felt like they're trying to aim for everybody.
And again, if it is diverging from the book, that is something that they clearly wanted to put in there, is the concept of learned fear versus inherent fear, and the idea of corruption. I was just very drawn to that. And I think the other thing that surprised me on how dark this went is the one line where Nimona says, I don't know what's harder, people who want to kill me or sometimes that I want to let them. And she says that initially and you're kind of like, wow, that's dark. And then it comes up at the end and she's literally willing to end her existence. Like, that was dark, and it was beautifully well done. The visual and the graphics of this concept with the sword and the darkness and the light, like, there was so much symbolism in that moment, and it was so beautifully well done. Like, I was definitely tearing up a little bit. I was like, dang, this got dark fast. Like, wow, this is terrifying. Did you see that coming? Did you think they were actually willing to go that dark?
I think if this was a Disney movie, I wouldn't have. But I think because, again, I think we've seen other animated movies go dark. So I don't know. I think I was just kind of going with the ride with it. I wasn't expecting one way or the other. I think because this movie wasn't like, it was marketed a lot, but also not at the same time. So I had no expectation. I didn't even know what this movie was about. I was just like, all right, I just know we're going to watch it because I think our audience will like it. So I knew really nothing about it. I played the LA crossword puzzle. I swear I'm going somewhere with this. And like the mini crossword puzzle. And every day before I play the crossword puzzle, because I play the New York Times one too. I like that one more, but sometimes you want a second one. And I play the LA crossword puzzle. And every day there was a commercial for this movie. So all I knew was like the little 30-second trailer I was watching where people were like, it's spectacular. It's a great movie. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm glad it's great. But I didn't know what it was about until literally when I clicked on it, I read the little blurb from Netflix. I was like, oh, there's like some hero villain thing going on. I guess that's cool.
I had no idea. I turned it on because I saw a little bit of the behind the scenes, the audio recording. But other than that, I had no idea. I didn't know that this was going to be like a darkness, light, good, evil, villain, institute versus, like, I didn't know any of that. But I overall really enjoyed it. I thought that they had enough topics of conversation to be interesting for a family, to be interesting for adults. there were definitely some moments where maybe sometimes the pacing was a little too fast for me. Sometimes I would have enjoyed a little bit more digging into it.
Love fast pacing. I love a good fast movie.
But overall, I really enjoyed the relationship between Bal and Nimona. I love at one point where she was like, I like this. Can we stay here? And I was like, oh, she just wants to play Monopoly at home. Like, it was just cute. I loved it. It was really fun. I overall, again, like, would I watch it again? Not necessarily, but I also have no free time. None of us have free time. When do we watch anything again, Kat? We were always like, this is a Legends of Tomorrow episode I'm going to watch again. Have you ever watched a Legends episode again?
No,
I never have.
I have not.
I would love
but
to,
I also
but I don't.
I don't like rewatching things. So if I'm watching something, I'm not, there's so many people that have like comfort shows. There's like, I have friends who are like, oh, I'll really, there you go. Star Trek is one of yours.
Star Trek. Yeah, I love that you knew that. You knew immediately. Knew Star Trek Voyager. That's Enterprise. I rewatch those all the time.
Yeah, and I know you have Star Trek. I have a couple of friends who likes, a lot of like comedy shows they'll rewatch, but there's so few shows I'll rewatch. There's like concepts I'll rewatch. Like I'll watch like a guy's grocery game Food Network show that I've definitely seen the concept of millions and millions of times. I'll watch Chopped once a lot. Like I'll watch that. So like, that's what I'll watch. But I'm probably not going to like hunt down for like, this is the best guy's grocery game episode. I should rewatch that. No, I just don't go on the hunt for that very much. Unless like Spider-Verse was a good example where I did rewatch Into the Spider-Verse, but that was because another movie was coming out. Yeah. And that's my favorite movie of all time. So I was like, oh yeah, it'd be nice to rewatch it and like get excited for the next thing. I'm trying to think if there's like any movies I rewatched that I watched multiple times. I'm hoping Barbie will be one of them. We should cover Barbie for this. I just thought about it. We really should be covering Barbie.
Oh,
I don't know
gosh.
what you think about that. We gotta watch Barbie.
We are gonna watch Barbie. We are definitely gonna watch. We're gonna do it. We're gonna watch this cultural phenomenon.
I've been waiting for this movie even before as a cultural phenomenon. Like I've been so excited for Barbie.
Do you have any like? I saw a thing on Twitter the other day that like, what's a movie that you could repeat the dialogue, 90% of the dialogue with 100% accuracy? Is there any movie that you've watched that you could do that you've seen it enough times where you could basically do the whole movie?
Not a movie, but I would say Heroes. Like there is like, I would rewatch that shit, especially that first season over and over and over and over again. So probably that's the only one I could think of.
Mine are like shitty popcorn movies, like The Day After Tomorrow though. And National Treasure. like I kid you not, The Day After Tomorrow is my, quote, spring cleaning movie whenever I'm doing like a deep, in-depth cleaning of my space and I'm like dusting and like scrubbing. It's The Day After Tomorrow. I don't know why, but I know probably 100% of the dialogue in that movie with a 90% accuracy.
So there you go. And also Pam actually has a question. That's what my question was regarding the movie before I watched it. Was it a complete remake or just an adaptation? For me, it was more of a reinvention side. I think we've talked about this before in this podcast, but those are my favorite type of adaptations where I think, Spider-Verse does a good job of this too, where it's not, point blank, where it's like a point, point A to point B, where it's like that happened exactly in the movie. Like I don't want to watch a movie of something I already read. Like I like where like the heart of it is there, or maybe the big twist is there, or just like reinvent it a little bit, because don't lose the soul of it, I think is always my point. And it seems like this movie did a good job at that, whereas like there's some things they hit, but not everything, but it had the soul. And I think that makes a good adaptation.
And I think, like, I was thinking about that, but in terms of something else, like for instance, the new Avatar that's coming out, the new Avatar, the live action based off the TV series. That's one where I think we would have a very hard time with them doing like a different, a reimagining of it.
See, but I would want to see it though. I would want to see them do that because I've seen the cartoon. I already know that. I would want to see.
Agreed. I don't want to see it again. That's why I didn't want anyone to touch it.
I would like to see things where maybe it feels like a lost episode in a way, where it's like that's a new concept we haven't seen from Avatar, but it doesn't lose who these characters are. But yeah, I just also, I think The Walking Dead did it pretty well too. I haven't read every Walking Dead comic, but I know the gist of the comic, where it's like they chose some things to happen, but then there's others where there's new characters or new concepts. Like that's what I would want to see, is like stray certain areas, keep certain, like if Zuko doesn't become, an anti-hero or the hero of the story at the end, that'd be stupid, right?
Oh, there you go. I didn't know where you were going with
that.
No, and I was like,
that,
excuse me, don't ruin the best story
exactly.
ever.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't want to lose something that's so important to the show, but also, do I really want to see Aang?
No,
I don't even know. Like, do I want to see him do the same things that he did in that original?
This does not need to be rehashed. This movie does not need to be done.
I'm excited for the other stuff because they're making like the new cartoon things of them being older and like continue. I want to see that.
I hope it's based off of the comic books because I
think they will.
Stacks of them. They're really good. But like, did you remember when I was really obsessed with the TV show The Last Ship for a while? That was the one I did a lot of press for. It's based off a book,
I don't know why I don't.
And it's the same idea. Like the book itself, was like a virus wipes out 90% of humanity, and a naval ship that's off in the Arctic is separated from it all, and it comes back and is like, oh no, most of the world is gone. What do we do? We're the last ship. The book itself, the premise, like that's the basic premise, but then it follows a really, really kind of misogynistic like trail where like none of the women on the planet can reproduce anymore, and so they start to become commodities. And I was like, oh, I don't like that at all. Like I started reading the book because I was like, I like the TV show. No, the TV show's great, but it's the same idea. Like it branches off enough where it's basically just based off of the idea of the book. But I think what you're pointing out here and what Pam, you're pointing out is that the idea that the Nimona movie keeps to the spirit and the soul of the book. And I think that is the most important part, that if you keep to the spirit and the soul, a reinvention or a different story, I think it's really valuable to see. And I am glad that people who read it enjoyed it. And I would love to hear if any of our listeners have read the graphic novel or listened to the audiobook, please let us know what you think. thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. Let us know how you interpreted it. We've not read the graphic novel. Do you insist that we read it? Kat owns it, so you can insist she does.
I do. I have to look for it. I have it somewhere in the house.
For Phil's sake, we're gonna make you finally read this.
He was, when I wrote, because I told him we're doing this show, and he's like, "No, it's okay, you didn't." I understand.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to talk about from the film? I enjoyed the animation style. We didn't really talk a lot about.
Yeah, we did.
I really enjoyed that.
It was very different. I liked it as well. I think it worked well, and I think, again, it's kind of it almost had the Spider-Verse feel to it. I think it's like this new era of animation we're seeing, and I think it works for it. I think the action was fun. There's a lot of action, but also not a lot of action all at the same time in this movie. So
I think it was just enough. I would have been, again, for this movie felt a little visually loud to me. So any more action would have been a little much with all the shape shifting and all the stuff that was going on and the airplane head that I had going on. It was just enough. Right. Just enough for me. I agree. Okay. So I think that's going to wrap up our conversation. I would love to hear what our listeners thought. I can't wait to hear what Morgan thought.
Me too.
Otherwise, I think let's kind of make sure everybody knows where to find us. I said at the beginning of the podcast, The Legendary Ladies on Stitcher and iTunes. Subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think about our reviews. You can find us on Patreon, thelegendaryladies.com/ No, that's not right. You can find us at thelegendaryladies.podcast.com. That is correct. The Patreon is patreon.com/thelegendaryladies. If you are a Legendary listener, subscriber, or higher, you do get the option to join in the chat, which Pammy and Rachel, who are currently in this, can tell you they've been with us for over an hour and gotten a lot of really fun behind-the-scenes stuff and joined in. We're also trying to record a little bit earlier so that our live streams are more accessible to both the East Coast and the West Coast. So if you had joined us tonight, if you had been West Coast, you would have gotten it at 6 p.m., East Coast 9 p.m. So hopefully that's a little bit more doable.
Yeah, it's only 10:30 here. I feel like most people, this is like bedtime for people, but May 12 is not everyone's bedtime.
No, yeah. For years, Kat and Morgan have been doing this. We don't know how. I don't know how they've been doing this.
Me either. I've gotten more tired over the years. Like now I'm just like, well, I'm actually tired at 12 o'clock. Before I was like, yeah, let's rock on. Now I'm just like,
yeah,
I'm exhausted.
Kat would be up till like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
I don't even, not anymore. I'm glad I don't. Sometimes I'll hit 2, but I'll be like, one of my eyes are like literally drifting away. But I don't know how I used to do like 3 to 4.
I don't know. That. Yeah, you were crazy. So join us on the Patreon. You guys can become super cool patrons. And if you are, you can even join us and tell me to tell you to call you Pam, not Pammy. Pam's like, you can call me Pam. I was like, oh, cool. Other than that, you can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram, The Legendary Ladies, Twitter, Legends_podcast. We're going to be on Threads. We're going to be on TikTok. We are on Reddit. TikTok, The Legendary Ladies, Reddit. We're going to get all them. MySpace. We are going to be there. I don't even know if you could find MySpace anymore.
I don't think you can. I know you can't find our personal MySpaces anymore. I don't know what it looks like.
MySpace.com. What happened?
I think it had something to do with music now.
Yeah. It's all like this Red Hot Chili Peppers. Wow. That's wild. Cool. We're not on MySpace. Thank you so much to all of us, or all of the listeners, for joining us. Thanks to all of us as well. Kat, what have you got going on? Where are people going to be able to find you for the next month or so?
Well, San Diego Comic-Con, I'll be at. We actually did a whole Patreon episode about it. I'm going to be on a few panels. So if you're going, go check out my Twitter and check out my social media at Comic Uno to see where I'll be at, because it's a few signings and panels. And and also have a Kickstarter going on right now for our webtoon Slice of Life. It's about an anime character comes to life and falls in love with a high school cheerleader. So if you like queer content, hopefully you guys can go check that one out. We are live until actually Comic-Con, so around like July 20th or so. We are live, so hopefully you guys can go check that out.
Your Slice of Life is totally going to be picked up as a Netflix movie one day.
I hope so. That'd be fun.
I'm just saying, like, this is on July 6th, 2023 at 7:26 p.m. I'm predicting it.
Yeah, let's manifest. Let's
manifest it,
sure.
Listeners. Manifest Kat's Slice of Life becoming the next Nimona. You can find me on Instagram, Amy_hip, HYP. And I'm on Twitter. Don't really use it anymore. So I'm almost exclusively on Instagram. So join us on Instagram. And thank you so much for joining us. We love that you guys loved Nimona. Please let us know what you thought. And have a wonderful week. See you next time. Stay legendary.